Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. It's time to have a look at the new Battle Pass, and what we're going to do in this video is we're going to have a look at the Warbond shop, what's in it, my thoughts about it, and also what my recommendations are. Before we get into that though, I did want to show you a new option that Gaijin has added, which I know has frustrated a lot of you guys, and has frustrated me too. The ignore bad weather warnings and airfield spawn option has been added, so you'll find it in air battle settings. You can toggle it off and on. I have obviously toggled it on because it's one of the most annoying things in the game when it defaults to just plopping you on the airfield. This is defaulted to off, so make sure to default it to on if you don't want to randomly spawn on the airfield instead of in the air in matches where you have a bit of cloud. So just to let you know that's there, make sure to sort it out. As always, if you enjoy the content, make sure to subscribe and also like the video. Let's get started on this new Battle Pass. By the way, if you wanted to preview anything in the Battle Pass, all you have to do is hit this little button here, and then basically whatever you are clicking on and previewing, you can actually see, which is kind of cool. So that's always a nice feature. Let's have a chat about the Warbond shop. So, nothing's really changed. The Warbond shop is basically the same as it was previously. I'd say like the standard of vehicle is a bit higher compared to what was there before, but it's nothing too crazy. For example, with this one, you have the decals, which are here. You also have the decorations, but you don't have access to any of the camouflages. So instead, you just have the signs. Never really been into these signs. I know some people are, but it's not really my bag. But yeah, so that's kind of turned up. The decals that are on offer in this one at rank 4 and then 3 levels required are all the derpy tiger ones. So you can see here you have all the derpies, and these are ones from all over the events, and then there's actually 2 that I've missed, so probably going to be getting those, or at least one of them, since you can only get one a Warbond shop, which is very, very annoying. The actual decal itself for this Warbond shop, the Lady Death pinup, is really nice, following the theme of the kind of like dead women stuff, but generally I think it's actually really cool that they're adding this stuff in. For vehicles, you have a bunch of test drives, so you have the Polar, the MLRS, the G91R4, and then also the MI24. And then also we had a look at the premium vehicles that were here basically the other day. So in this video, let's have a look at the premium vehicles and then the test drives. Everything else, as I said, is just very standard. Just more camouflages, more talismans. They still haven't added in a coastal talisman yet, so that is kind of annoying. Maybe at some point they could do that, but at least right now, that isn't the case. Basically, they only do the good old coastal fleet one at rank 3 instead of rank 4, which is only there for blue water. Right, so let's have a look at the test drives. So first of all, you've got the Polar. Polar's not very good. It keeps getting raised in BR along with the other heavy cruisers, but it's not on the same level as the heavy cruisers, if that makes sense. It has these 203s, which are not fantastic at firing. They don't have great penetration, and generally it's a very large platform, so it's really easy to hit because Italy has these really long ships that basically have a very, very large silhouette with a huge bridge in the middle. And it also doesn't have a lot of armor, as you can tell right here and also here. So you basically just get mauled to death, and that's not very fun. So the Polar, unless you're really interested in playing, Italian naval, is not going to be great. Another vehicle that's also not very good, but might be quite fun for a test drive, just because it's a bit of a meme, is the Type 75 MLRS. I would never say somebody should buy this, because it's just way too expensive for what it is. With the overpressure stuff nowadays, at least you can have a bit more fun with it, because you can overpressure tanks with this ridiculous rocket that it has. It doesn't have a lot of penetration, but it has 6 kilos of TNT equivalent. But the major issue with it is has no survivability, has no real armor. It is a TD, so what that means is it doesn't have access to artillery or anything. It's basically just something you spawn a few times, have a bit of fun with, or just die instantly, and then just move on to something else. So as kind of like a test drive vehicle, it's actually not that bad, because that's how you should be. You should never spend money on something like this. It's a ridiculous idea. You've also got the G91R4, kind of a old king, which used to be very good, but not as much anymore. You still have a lot of the things that make it really good, such as the Nords, which you can use in ground. This means it's at 9.3 nowadays, though, which is just insane. Because of how many cool AAs there are, and also just how many better vehicles there are at that BR. In air at 8.7, if you know how to use the AIM-9Bs properly, you can still be really good, and you can actually catch out quite a lot of people while playing it. But I feel like generally you're going to have a bit more of an issue with it, just because they move down quite a lot of guys to 8.3, which are just better than you, such as the Sabres and the MiG-15s, which outmaneuver you and out-energy fight you. So basically, this thing is super reliant on its missiles, and 9.3 exists, which unfortunately puts it in a rough place. 9.3 seems to only be for naval, so not ground, so at 8.7 that's a little bit better for the Nords, but you still have the issue with the radar guided AAs, so kind of annoying in that way. And then you've got the Mi-24 HFS-80. This one is the German Mi-24. Whenever I've used this, I've never really had a problem with it. It has access to the R60 MKs that can catch people out. These are the all-aspect R60 export models, but then also you have the Sturm missile. Now, the Sturm has a 5-kilometer range, which means that, you basically don't go very far away from the battlefield in order to use it, but 5 kilometers is enough to kind of outrange a lot of AAs that you're going to run into. So I think that's actually not too bad. And then the other thing is you can actually take 4 of them, and then also the missiles alongside. Because it has custom weapons, you could probably take 3 sets of missiles and then 1 set of air-to-air missiles, or you could take the funny guns, these good old these ones, which have just the 2 12.7s and the 4 7.62s if you really want to have a bit of extra firepower. But generally what you do is you take off with this thing, you hit things with the Sturm, you have IRCM, so you're good against IR missile vehicles. You also have flares and chaff, and also the HIRSSS. So as long as you don't run into Sacklow stuff, or as long as you don't get too close to the enemy, you can actually just do really, really well in it. So generally it's not too bad, and since it's a premium, you get some pretty good bonuses on it, and also it means that you can just stick it in your German lineup at 9.7, which I don't think there's a great 9.7 lineup for Germany in ground, but I do know there's some pretty good lineups around it. So let's just have a look real quick. For 9.7, you have access to your AAs and the Weasel 1A2. So I suppose you could use those to get into it. But yeah, 9.3 is kind of the meta BR for Germany. But 9.7 works too. Like you can bring it along and have a bit of fun. So out of the test drive vehicles, I mean, I would probably say, surprisingly, that this one is the best, the Mi-24P. So that's at number 1. Number 2 is going to be the G91R4. And then number 3 is the Polar. Like, I don't think the Polar is good, and it's way worse than a lot of the other cruisers you're going to face. But at least you're still going to do damage. At least you're still going to get high rewards from it. And then the last one's going to be the Type 75 MLRS, which, as I said, is just not very good. So moving on to the actual premiums that you get to keep permanently, we have actually a standard amount of them. So 6 as usual. You got the Mörkö-Morane, you got the Aigle, the Grant, and then also you got the Z47, T3457, and then also the Mustang Mk.1A. So a lot of older vehicles here, like this one, T3457 1943, I feel like has been around since the start of ground forces. Mustang Mk.1A was one of the earliest vehicles that they added as a pack vehicle. So it's kind of cool to see it in the Warbond shop. And then also at the same time, stuff like the Grant 1 has been around for ages, just not really the American one, not the British one, sorry, but the American one. So let's go through them. Number 1, we have the Mörkö-Morane. This is a Finnish vehicle in the Swedish tech tree. It's kind of odd. It's one of those that has quite a lot of firepower for its BR, but generally doesn't feel great flight performance-wise. I normally don't like these vehicles a lot. They're not ones which fit me the best. I prefer vehicles that have a bit better flight performance, like they're a little bit lighter, they're a little bit more maneuverable, and they have less firepower, so therefore it's a bit easier to kind of get the guns on target and go from there. And because, you know, I feel quite good in terms of like my actual shooting capabilities, whereas actually getting onto the target with a heavier platform, that can be kind of harder to do. The vehicle has access to the Claymore Mk.1A, which does have quite a lot of kind of takeoff power on it, which is quite good, but it's still a chunky aircraft. It still kind of loops around the place. And what is interesting is you can actually choose to either have a Mk.1A 20mm from the Germans, or you can get a 12.7mm Berezin, which is right here. Basically, with the Berezin, you get 230 rounds of ammunition, whereas with the 20mm, you get a little bit more. Oh, sorry, a little bit less, if I remember. So the 20mm hits harder, but the Berezin has more ammunition. So it's whatever you kind of feel like you fit with the best. And it seems like the game is breaking itself. But the 20mm Mk.1A, they changed it like a few years ago. It was really, really good, and it still is good today. They basically made all of the 20mm, apart from the Japanese ones, when it comes to, you know, the 20s, to be really, really good. You can see with the 151, you get 120 rounds, so you basically get half the rounds, but you get way more punching power with these rounds too. So they're very good with air target belts. You can see mainly HEI. You also have APHE. If you pen, you kill. And then also with the 12.7, you have some nice penetration too, but just not as much. And then also the rounds are a little bit more all over the place. This vehicle, though, is much more just like an air superiority vehicle. Like, it doesn't have use much in ground apart from destroying other planes, and also in naval it's pretty useless too. So this is more of an air arcade, aerialistic thing, which you can wander around with. I personally don't really rate it that much, but I do know people that do, so at least there's that, I suppose. The Aigle is here. Aigle's fine. Like, I mean, this is just kind of a very simple vehicle, which is very similar to a lot of the other French vehicles. The thing that I like about the Aigle is that it has these 138.6mm. So if you have a look at like early tier France, right, they have the 130s, then they have the 138s. Both of them do ridiculous amounts of damage with their kind of AP shells that you're supposed to use. So you have these SAP BC shells, which have a lot of penetration, but also if you have a look at the TNT equivalent, it still has 2.53 kilos. So you can pen a lot of machines that you're facing, and then also just donk them with the HE as well inside the round. So it actually is a perfect combo. You end up like ammo racking a lot of stuff with them. You end up doing a ton with them, which is great. The only issue with these guns, terrible targeting speed, but generally that's not too bad. You know, you can get around that. And then also the torpedoes themselves are not great. Like these 23 DTs, they only travel 13 kilometers. So on the larger maps, you're not really going to be able to do much. But if you're looking for a solid vehicle to be able to grind through like the early areas of French naval, I tell you what, this one isn't that bad. Like with French naval, especially with the blue water trees, you have a million 4.3s. So you have the Vautour, the Vauquelin, the Guichin, and then also the Marceau and the Milan. The Marceau and the Milan are basically like the German vehicles, and then also the Kleber as well. But if you have a look at these are all of kind of like the French vehicles, apart from, no, I think this one's French because it's post-war, but the Vauquelin and the Vautour are the closest to the Aigle. And, you know, they work really well together. So basically with this vehicle, you're not just like kind of bringing it along to grind through a bunch of stuff. You're also bringing it along to be able to spade 5 other destroyers that you can bring it with. And then, you know, even push into rank 3 with it. So it's actually in a really nice place to give yourself a backup to these vehicles if you're trying to spade them or if you're trying to research through them. And I think that's actually quite powerful. So the Aigle has good firepower, it has pretty decent mobility, but then also at the same time, you know, it doesn't have great AA armaments, doesn't have great torpedoes, but I think it's actually quite a good pick especially if you're a person trying to get into naval. For Britain, we have the Grant 1 with the American flag on it. You can see there. Oh no, this is... Man, okay. So, it has the British flag, operator country Great Britain, research country US. So that's why it has like the American one. So this is the American grant, my bad. So if you didn't know in game, there are two grants, because why not be confusing? So there's a grant which is right here for the USA, which has the British flag. And then if you have a look at Britain, Britain also has a grant, which is right here with the British flag. So the one in the battle pass is the American one. It isn't the British one. The grant's kind of fun. Like I'm not gonna lie. The M3 Lee is one of those vehicles that I go back to quite a lot because of the pages of history. And I just kind of go around and donk people with it. The vehicle has like quite a lot of factors that are quite fun, such as having 6 crew. So it's quite hard to one-shot this thing unless you hit from the side. It also has the 75mm M2 cannon. This has access to the M61, which will just annihilate anything that you find at this BR. Even in like a full up tier, this 75mm will kill things. Yeah, it has like limited traverse, but if you get used to using it, it's not too bad. The 37mm on the top actually has quite good penetration, 87, and then you can use that as like a plinky plonky bang bang, and you can just kind of have a bit of fun. Now, is this vehicle like the most meta thing at 2.7? No, not at all. Like the Stuarts, especially in the the American tech tree, are much better than it. You know, they have the stabilizers, they have more mobility, they have scouting, and you can also take like a full lineup with them. But the Grant is a bit of fun, and it means that while you play around this BR, especially since a lot of like pages of histories have access to the Grant or have access to the M3 Lee, you can actually just have a bit of fun and just play around with it. And I think that's super important in War Thunder. As a general grinding vehicle, there are better ones, way better ones than the Grant, but at least with this one, you can have a bit of fun with it. So yeah, I don't think it's as bad as people think it is. I think it's actually quite enjoyable. It's just the fact that there are better options at that BR, but in the Warbond shop, that doesn't really matter as much because, you know, you're getting it for free. Then we have the Z47. This is one of the fake destroyers that Germany has, and by fake, I mean they never finished it, so basically it's just one of those which is a bit fantasy. The Z47 has a brother or a sister, the Z46, which is in the standard tech tree. They're very similar. What these things have is these 128mm dual-mounted guns, so one right here, and then 2 on the back, and they're basically just HE spammers. So you can see the fire rate here, 15 rounds per minute for 20 rounds, and then 14 rounds per minute for 18. So if you do salvo fire, you can just bang, 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 bang. And what you do is you just lob HE at things, and you don't always pen them, but what you do is you continuously do damage to them, and you just rack up a million score because of how HE works in naval. So this reward here, the 1800% SL reward, really starts racking up with a vehicle like this because you can just make an absolute metric ton of SL. So if you're looking for a vehicle that is pretty good at making SL, especially if you're addicted to the loot boxes, this one actually isn't that bad of a pick, especially since you can get it, once again, free from the Warbond shop. The other thing to also note about this vehicle, though, is you will go up against a lot of destroyers, which are basically just better versions of you, such as the American destroyers and even the British destroyers, which have your capabilities, but also have AP pen, so you do have to be a little bit careful. This vehicle does have access to torpedoes, I guess the G7As. Once again, they're not very good. You have to get the torpedo mode, but it's a premium, so you get it for free. And they still only go about 12 kilometers, if I remember. When it comes to the secondaries, though, it does have quite a lot in terms of AA, which is not always the case with these types of vehicles. You have 7 dual 37s, 2 quad 20s, and then also 2 dual 20s, which is quite nice. Like, it works very well. And the other thing is, at 4.7, nowadays for Germany, you do have quite funky lineups for the blue water. You have the Z32, you have the Z43, which, by the way, this one is just better than, so I don't really understand why these are that BR. Z46, which is the brother, the Elbing, which is really poor, And then also the Golster if you have that. So basically, what the Z47 is a way of getting through a lot of this crap to be able to get to the Hipper, the Graf Spee, and things which are a little bit more fun. The Leipzig and the Nuremberg are not too bad, but they have low survivability, and that's kind of a problem with a lot of these vehicles here. And the Z47 also kind of has that problem, especially since it has these massive ammo racks for the 128s. Another thing to also mention, it doesn't actually have a lot of ammo. So for the 128s, right? So you have six guns, you have 720 rounds of ammo. There's been a lot of times when I've been playing this machine or the Z46 where I've straight up just run out of ammo. And it's just wild to think about. Like if you compare it to like a bunch of the other German vehicles, it's very similar, where you have only 600 rounds for this Z43, only 240. Well, technically, it's around about 700 if you add all the guns together for the Z32. But if you have a look at like the Americans, for example, with the Porter, you have 2,880 rounds for your guns, right? Or the Trenton, where you have 1,200 rounds for your 6 inches, or your Mitscher, which is more similar with 700, but that's way more accurate. Whereas the Fletcher, you have 1,800 rounds. So these German vehicles have a lot less rounds, which means that it's a lot harder to actually maintain the damage, because you'll get to a point if you've been left alone and you just pump and pump and pump, then you're just going to run out of rounds, which is not very fun. So you have to sit on a capture point and reload, which is easier to do nowadays because it doesn't do it one at a time, but still, it's just kind of a bit of a problem. But generally, I think that's not a bad vehicle. Like, it works well for what it needs to be. Next vehicle, T345743. As I said, this is one of like the oldest premiums in the game, and it's always been one which works very well. They haven't updated its model like they did the T3485s, I don't think. But basically, this is very similar to the standard T3457. The difference is the turret. Depending on who you ask, this turret is either better or worse than the one in the tech tree. And it really is just, it's one of those things where it isn't like preference based, but they're very similar to each other. So with the T3457, you have this vehicle, right? And with the premium version, the 1943 indicates that it has the later turret, whereas the other T3457 has kind of like the earlier turret, which you'll see on the ones with the 76mm. So basically, this one's slightly taller, and then this one is slightly easier to pen because you have like the easy cheek shot, which is 45mm, where in this one it's 53mm. And also there are overlaying layers, which means that a lot of the time you'll hit it and it will kind of like get stuck between layers and it won't die. You also have a turret ring hit on this one, but after volumetric, it's definitely a lot harder to hit. So that is also part of it. So that's why these things are basically the same BR, because this one has the ZIS-4M cannon, this one has the ZIS cannon, but they're basically the same. Like you have the BR-271K and the HE, whereas this one gets access to the BR-271P, which is the APCR on top of the BR-21K. So what you have here is basically the same vehicle, just a slightly different turret. And then also at the same time, just generally, this one has a little bit more survivability. So it's technically pay to win, but not really, by the smallest amount. So the 57, the difference between this and the 76, much higher gun velocity, much better penetration. The other thing is about the 2 rounds, which is interesting. So you have the BR-271 and then you have the BR-271K. Now, usually, depending on what you're looking at, you would probably take the K because it's the one that you have to research. Usually that's seen as the better round, right? Well, the 271 actually, in my opinion, is kind of better than the 271K. And the reason is because it has better penetration. You can see with the 271, it pens 86mm at 2000 at 0 degrees, also 120 and 49 at 30 and 60. Whereas if you have a look at the 271K, it pens 106 and 54 at 30 and 60 respectively. So basically this one has more penetration, but the K has more TNT equivalent. But because of how APHE works in War Thunder, you don't really need that extra TNT equivalent in order to do damage once you penetrate. because of the whole, sphere thing and the stuff that we talked about last year. So for me, you actually take the stock round on this thing instead of the 271K, and you make more money from it. And maybe you can take a few APCR if you want, but generally, that's going to be one of the most annoying things to use in the game. So this vehicle in general is in kind of a wonky place when it comes to the game as well. So they uptiered a lot of Soviet vehicles more recently in this BR bracket. You have the KV1s this 5 here now. You have stuff like the ASU 57, the ISU 152, and then also you have stuff like the BTR 152D, which actually works really well as an AA at this BR. But one of the problems is if you have a look at other nations such as Germany has a really annoying 6.0 lineup. They mainly have a really annoying kind of like set of odd lineups around these BRs. So what ends up happening is you don't actually face a lot of these BRs because of those odd and awkward lineups that many have. Like, so for example, for Germany, a lot of the awkward lineups are all like SPGs. So more people go towards the Tiger. More people go towards kind of like the VKs, or they go towards the Panther D, right? And that basically means that you get uptiered quite a lot into that area, especially when you face Germany or if you face America, which is mostly what you're going to face. Now, you'll be able to pen most of them. The Panther might be a bit of a problem and it'll just look at you and you'll die. But generally, it's not as fun in terms of matchmaking. So this one is super meta dependent. At its BR and down in BR, it works really well. But at 5.3 and 5.7, there are vehicles which are designed, which are just they're basically designed to destroy you in real life, and that's what they do in game 2. Like the Panther against this thing, unless you're highly mobile, moving around in this thing, which you can do if you're flanking and doing all that stuff, you're gonna have a real tough time with actually, getting a lot done with it, which kind of sucks. So for me, I don't think it's a bad vehicle. I think it actually works pretty well, and I like it in this kind of 4.7 area. I just think that there's a meta around that 5.3, 5.7 area that you're going to run into a lot, and they're going to be very, very strong against you. Then you got the Mustang Mk.1A. So this one, as I said, it's one of the oldest premiums in the game. And one of the coolest things about it is it has 1 million camos. So if you are a camo hunter, if you are a person who really enjoys grinding out camos, this is definitely the vehicle for you. The camos themselves are really awesome. Like there's a bunch of really cool stuff. Like you can see here, the Joan camo, which I think is really cool. And then also the Diblinski, which is like the invasion camo. You have the 414th, which is like a standard RAF one. And then also the RCAF one. And then you also have another RCAF one, the good old Royal Canadian Air Force. So this is one of the early Mustangs. It has the Allison still. The V1710. It has a lot of takeoff power, and also it has access to the 20mm Hispanos. Now, back in the day, these were not as good. So this vehicle was kind of nice because you had 4 of them. So even if it sparked, you were still going to do damage. Something was going to get through. Nowadays, these guns rock. So basically, even with a short burst, a tap, you annihilate whatever's in front of you. And that's just kind of crazy. The other thing also, they buffed these guns to make the belts a lot better at penetration in terms of ground units. And since you're at 3.7, you're at a BR where you're facing a lot of Shermans, a lot of T-34s, a lot of Panzer IVs, and you're just able to go through the top of a lot of them, which means that you can just deck them in ground as well with this type of vehicle. So in air, it's a little bit heavy, and it doesn't maneuver as well, but it can get the job done, especially as a secondary aircraft helping out allied fighters. It can't really climb to the bomber altitude as well, so that doesn't really work very well. But the main thing is you go after the fighters, right? In ground, you just kind of are a monster. You can keep the air controlled, and then also at the same time, you can go after ground targets too. So even though this thing doesn't have any bombs, because of the guns and because of how useful they are nowadays, it actually works really well as an additional vehicle to the 3.7 lineup. And when you actually have a look at Britain, they actually have a really good 3.7 lineup. You have the Sherman 2, you have the Cromwell 1, which you can bring in. And then also you have all of the supporting cast. So you have the Achilles with a nice gun, the AUCAA, and then also stuff like the Sark, which is a good mobile vehicle with scouting. So you can kind of help your team out. Another thing that the Mustang does is it's a rank 3. So what this means is you can actually drag this rank 2 ground lineup up to rank 3 to be able to do dailies, to be able to do specials, and also to do events, which is really cool. You can do this with the Thunderbolt or the Whirlwind either, but I think the Mustang out of the 3 of them fits this bill a bit better because it's a bit more multi-role. So generally, I think that's actually quite nice too. So as a vehicle, this one has kind of stood the test of time. It works incredibly well, and generally, I would say, is in a very good place. You just got to be a bit careful about its weight, because its weight puts stress on the engine, which means that you can have a few issues with dogfighting, but then it's all about the setup and not getting into those positions in the first place. So overall, this Battle Pass has some pretty good vehicles. The Aigle's great. The Grant is a bit of fun. It's probably not most people's picks, but I would say generally it's not too bad. Then you got the Z47. Like, all these are solid. Maybe the T34 might have a bit of an issue with it, but if I'm going to rank them, so number 6 is the Mörkö-Morane. You know, it's a rank 2. It's a low BR, heavy platform, and it's not going to be good for grinding, not really going to be good for anything else. Number 5, I would probably have to give to the T34-57, even though, as I said, it's a solid vehicle and it'll work very well. It's just I think there are better options which are here. In terms of number 4, you have the Grant. Once again, fun vehicle, really fun lineup with it, but also because it's such a fun lineup, I don't know if the Grant makes it in, because of the fact that you would want to run the other stuff. Number 3 on this is going to be the Aigle, just because it's a rank 2, meaning that it's not as good for grinding, and you also don't get as good rewards as other vehicles that are around the place, even though those 138s are really fun to use. Number 2 is going to be the Z47. It's good in pretty much every single way, apart from the amount of ammo that you have. So generally that one's going to work very well, and you're going to print so much SL with it. It is just insane how much you can get. And then the Mustang is going to be number 1. I think generally this vehicle is super fun. It fits in a bunch of lineups. It also, once again, takes a lot of part in stuff like Pages of Histories, along with the British 37s, and also many other vehicles too. And it's got good rewards and great for grinding too. So that's the Battle Pass. I think generally it has, you know, some decent vehicles here. Would be nice if we could get some higher ranked ones, or some changes to the Battle Pass, or changes to the Warbond shop, but not yet. As always, I hope you have a wonderful day. I'll see you next time.
I'd just like to thank GMG Smiley, CD Beans, Chieftain Mike, EMN3 Galaxy, Tulio Pontecorvo, Brendan Quinn, Carrion Crow, Gus Irenicus, Pyman, Wartinder, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, B. Young, Ozzy Panzer, Alan Hacker, Liam Shear, Opium Prime, Lafouche, Sem, Aslan, Uncle Bean, and Derek R. for supporting the channel.